Welcome back to HOA Uncensored, where suburban authority picks up a clipboard and accidentally testifies against itself. Today brings one swimming pool, one president who believed laminated paper was a branch of government, and an emergency designation she never saw coming. Tell me where you're listening from, because I need to know how far the legend of a woman arguing with 18,000 gallons of protected water has traveled. Grab a towel. This gets wet. The first warning arrived at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning, floating in the shallow end of my pool, inside a gallon-sized freezer bag. That was impressive for 3 reasons. First, my gate was locked. Second, the notice had been laminated. Third, whoever threw it had missed the patio by 32 feet and still felt qualified to criticize my property maintenance. I fished it out with the leaf skimmer while wearing pizza socks, one rubber sandal, and the expression of a man who had not yet been given enough coffee to process waterproof hostility. Across the top, in burgundy letters large enough to be read from a low-flying aircraft, it said, "Final notice of non-compliant recreational water feature." The stationery had a gold-embossed crest showing 2 oak trees and a fountain. Our neighborhood had no fountain. One of the oak trees had died in 2019 and been replaced by a fiberglass utility box. Still, the paper carried itself like it had arrived from a royal court staffed entirely by assistant managers. According to the letter, my pool violated Section 8.14 Cs of the Willowbriar Estates Residential Harmony Standards because it constituted an unapproved visual water element capable of producing glare, noise, humidity, and an atmosphere inconsistent with neighborhood uniformity. I read that sentence 3 times. Humidity had apparently joined organized crime. The board demanded that I drain the pool within 10 calendar days, submit a $425 removal review fee, and restore the 640 square foot area to neutral landscaping. Failure to comply would trigger a fine of $250 per day. My coffee went cold in my hand, as it has during every major event in my adult life. Birthdays, job interviews, my sister's wedding. Somewhere nearby, there is always a mug of coffee quietly becoming soup temperature. I looked at the blue water. Then I looked at the letter. Then I looked at the security camera mounted above the kitchen window. "Well," I said, "somebody just laminated evidence. My name is Daniel Mercer, and 47 Lantern Pike was the first thing I owned that could not fit in a backpack. I bought it after 12 years of apartment living, including a studio where the bathroom door opened only if the refrigerator was closed. The backyard cedar trees smelled like Christmas whenever it rained. The pool was why I stayed. My father, Robert Mercer, helped me rebuild it the summer before he died. It had been a cracked concrete bowl full of leaves, 2 frogs, and a patio chair that nobody could explain. We resurfaced it ourselves over 9 weekends. Dad measured everything twice, complained about my trowel technique with the tenderness of a drill instructor reviewing a soufflé, and wrote our initials beneath the coping stone near the pump. DM and RM, June 18th. By August, my nieces were learning to swim there. Dad spent his last healthy summer in a floating chair, wearing a straw hat and calling the deep end structurally overconfident. So no, it was not a recreational water feature. It was 18,240 gallons of memory with a variable speed pump. I also knew more than the average homeowner about water. I designed municipal storage and distribution systems for the fictional city of Bellwether, which meant I spent my weekdays calculating pressure zones, hydrant flows, and how much water a building needed when something had gone extremely wrong. It was not glamorous. Nobody has ever leaned across a candlelit table and whispered, "Tell me more about backflow prevention." But it taught me that definitions matter, capacity matters, and officials become wonderfully calm when documents have the correct stamp. At 8:03 that same morning, the person responsible arrived in a white Lexus SUV, so clean it looked afraid of weather. Patricia Blevins, president of the Willowbriar Estates Homeowners Association, parked halfway across my driveway. She stepped out wearing a coral floral pantsuit that looked like a botanical garden had secured financing and entered middle management. A pearl necklace rested at her throat. Her khaki sun visor matched her clipboard, which had its own clear plastic rain cover despite a cloudless sky. Patricia was 62, 5'4", and able to stand in a way that made the ground seem delinquent. Her voice had the tonal warmth of a smoke alarm explaining tax law. "Mr. Mercer," she called, advancing through my open side gate with her clipboard held to her chest like a field marshal carrying nuclear codes. "I assume you have received the board's directive. It arrived by water. Service was completed at 6:52 a.m. by throwing it over a locked fence." She smiled, the way a stapler might smile before biting your thumb. "The association is permitted reasonable access for compliance communication under Section 3.02, Paragraph 7. Who entered the yard? That is not material. It is to the camera." Her eyes moved toward the kitchen window, and then back to me. The pause lasted less than a second, but I work with flow meters. Tiny changes tell you where the pressure is. "The material issue," she said, straightening with the posture of a 4-star general inspecting troops who had personally allowed algae, "is your pool. The board has completed a neighborhood aesthetic review. Recreational pools are no longer consistent with the architectural direction of Willow Briar Estates." When did the restriction change? The board clarified the existing standard on Monday. Was there a membership vote? A clarification does not require a vote. Did the recorded covenants already prohibit pools? Her mouth tightened like a purse with classified information inside. Section 8.14 prohibits unapproved exterior water features. My pool was approved in 1998. Permit number BW-98-44117. The approval is in your own property file. Previous approvals may be revisited when community standards evolve. Into what? Uniform excellence. Patricia said those words with the solemnity of someone naming a battleship. Behind her, a mourning dove made a noise that sounded suspiciously like laughter. She tapped the clipboard. Drainage must be complete by 5 p.m. next Thursday. After that, daily penalties will accrue. If the balance remains unpaid, the association may pursue a lien, and all remedies available under Article 11. You're threatening a lien over an approved pool. I am explaining consequences. Using waterproof stationery. Her face settled into the expression of a hotel guest who had discovered the breakfast buffet ended at 10. 10 days, Mr. Mercer. Then she returned to the Lexus, backed over the corner of my recycling bin, and drove away without acknowledging either event. I stood beside the pool until my coffee became a chilled beverage. I was worried, because being wrong had never slowed Patricia down. She fined Carol Nguyen $75 because a bicycle remained visible 43 minutes after sunset, and sent Leonard Pike 6 pages because his birdhouse was architecturally whimsical. She once measured a wreath during a memorial gathering while people carried casseroles inside. Patricia did not need a solid rule. She needed a printer and nobody willing to miss dinner for a board meeting. I spent that evening building a folder: covenants, amendments, permits, photographs, and footage of Gerald Blevins launching the laminated notice over my fence, like a man serving legal process at a dolphin enclosure. At 9:18 the next morning, the HOA portal posted my first fine, $250 for continued water presence. That phrase made the pool sound like a trespassing lake. At 11:40, Patricia posted on the private neighborhood Facebook group that the board was taking decisive steps to eliminate dangerous and obsolete aquatic structures. She included a photograph of my backyard, taken through a gap in the cedar hedge. In the lower right corner, Gerald's thumb covered half the lens like a ham attempting to stop journalism. Comments appeared immediately. Carol Nguyen wrote, "Is this Daniel's permitted pool?" Patricia replied, "All facts will be disclosed at the proper time." Leonard Pike wrote, "That means yes." His comment disappeared in 4 minutes. By Saturday, the fine total was $1,250, plus a $95 administrative monitoring fee. On Sunday, Patricia sent Curtis Bell, a pressure washer who also advertised inflatable party rentals and pool safety opinions. Curtis had the uncertain look of a man who had accepted an $80 job and found a subpoena hiding inside it. He admitted he was unlicensed, retreated to the sidewalk, and called Patricia while her Lexus idled beneath a sycamore, with the subtlety of a wedding cake conducting surveillance. Curtis left. 10 minutes later, Patricia emailed me a violation for refusing an authorized safety inspection. She attached a report, already signed by Curtis, stating that my pool presented an immediate and severe fire danger due to the quantity of standing water. That was the moment I almost lost my cool. I had spent 12 years designing water systems, and I had encountered bad engineering before. A developer once tried to connect a fire hydrant to an irrigation line. A councilman once asked whether gravity could be rescheduled for weekdays, but fire danger due to the quantity of standing water was a sentence so magnificently backwards that it seemed to bend light. I walked into the kitchen, poured fresh coffee, and called Patricia. She answered on the second ring. Willow Briar Compliance Office. It was her cell phone. Patricia, your inspector says water is a fire danger. The report speaks for itself. It certainly makes noises. Mr. Bell determined that your unauthorized water feature creates multiple hazards under Section 8.14c, Paragraph 4, including mosquito activity, reflective glare, unsupervised access, and fire exposure. What is fire exposure? The potential for fire. From the water? She inhaled like an accordion being unfolded by an angry polka musician. You are deliberately trivializing a serious process. No, I'm reading the serious process aloud. Drain the pool by Thursday, or the board will initiate lien review. Please put that in writing. I already have. Perfect. I hung up and stared at my cold coffee. Then I opened the county emergency water supply ordinance. Bellwether County had suffered a dry summer, and tanker trucks had recently hauled water more than 4 miles to 2 brush fires. A county program allowed qualifying pools, ponds, and tanks to be registered as auxiliary firefighting reservoirs. I had helped draft the technical appendix 3 years earlier and forgotten it, because most of my work ends up in binders nobody opens until smoke is visible. Qualification required 15,000 usable gallons, fire engine access within 100 feet, a dry hydrant connection, approved signage, and an emergency easement. My pool held 18,240 gallons, sat 86 feet from the curb, and already had a suitable pump. The pool was not a problem. The pool was underemployed. On Monday morning, I drove to Bellwether County Fire District 4 and asked for Battalion Chief Michael Alvarez. Everyone called him Big Mike, partly because he was 6'5" and shaped like a vending machine that had developed opinions about municipal preparedness. He had a silver mustache, forearms like bridge components, and the habit of stirring his coffee with a carpenter's pencil. We had worked together on 2 rural water projects. 4 years earlier, his own HOA had fined him for parking a fire department command vehicle in his driveway during a wildfire deployment. He had framed the violation letter. Big Mike read Patricia's inspection report in silence. His left eyebrow rose slowly, like a garage door revealing a tank. Immediate and severe fire danger, he said, due to the quantity of standing water. Daniel, I have fought fire for 28 years, and this is the first time anybody has warned me about aggressive water. He turned the page over, perhaps hoping the back contained an apology. Can the pool qualify? I asked. Capacity is enough. Access looks good from the aerial map. You'll need a permanent 6-inch dry hydrant, anti-vortex intake, locking valve, reflective placard, annual test, and a legal easement limited to declared emergencies. I can design it. You cannot certify your own design. I know. He grinned. It was the grin of a man who had just discovered that paperwork could be used as a rescue tool. Call Sal Moretti, he said. He installs rural drafting systems. Tell him Patricia Blevins thinks water catches fire. Salvatore Moretti arrived in a red utility truck carrying enough stainless steel to frighten a magnet. He was barrel-chested and moved like a bulldog with a plumbing license. 3 sharpened pencils lived behind his right ear. He inspected the pump room, measured the service lane, and tapped the concrete deck with a small hammer while humming, Volare. Good shell, he said. Good equipment. Whoever rebuilt this knew what they were doing. My father. Sal nodded once and became gentler with the hammer. When I showed him Patricia's letter, he read 2 paragraphs and laughed so hard he had to sit on a chlorine bucket. I had a board president like this in Marigold Ridge, he said. She made me hide my work van, so I wrapped it in a vinyl mural of her approved landscaping palette. 22 feet of beige hydrangeas. That van looked like a couch delivering a refrigerator. Can you install the connection by Wednesday? Sal looked toward the pool, then toward Patricia's house 2 doors down. For a normal customer, Friday. For a clipboard with a pulse, we start at sunrise. I would have followed that man into a volcano carrying nothing but a socket wrench. We spent the next 36 hours making the plan bulletproof under County Ordinance 22-407. Fire protection engineer Naomi Chen reviewed it. She was 5'2", wore round green glasses, and could detect an incorrect flange rating, like a hawk spotting a mouse with poor documentation. She corrected 2 valve specifications, required an additional protective bollard, and approved the design at 4:46 p.m. Tuesday. Once the easement is recorded and the acceptance test passes, she said, the reservoir becomes part of the county's supplemental fire protection plan. The HOA cannot require drainage, obstruction, or removal without county approval. Can they regulate its appearance? They can submit comments about the sign color. And can they make me drain it while comments are pending? Naomi looked over her glasses with the patient expression of a librarian being asked whether books may be stored in a bonfire. Mr. Mercer, draining a registered firefighting reservoir during Level 2 drought restrictions carries a civil penalty of up to $12,500. I signed the easement. At 6:02 Wednesday morning, Sal's truck rolled into the service lane, followed by an inspection van, an excavator, and a flatbed carrying pipe, bollards, and a polished red standpipe. At dawn, it sounded like an aircraft carrier assembling a kitchen island. Neighbors emerged in robes and slippers. Leonard Pike brought a folding chair and a thermos. Carol Nguyen arrived with breakfast burritos. 2 teenagers sat on skateboards at the curb. By 6:20, we had a respectful audience of 19 people, and 1 beagle, wearing a raincoat despite no forecast of rain. Sal cut a trench to the service lane, installed the intake and 6-inch pipe, mounted the locking valve, and protected it with yellow bollards. Naomi checked every joint. Big Mike supervised from engine 412. At 8:07, the fire engine arrived. That brought Patricia. Her golf cart shot around the corner with an amber beacon flashing on top, though the cart was moving at roughly the speed of an ambitious refrigerator. She wore a lavender tracksuit patterned with white magnolias, as if a sofa in a retirement cruise lounge had become sentient and demanded jurisdiction. The clipboard was present. Of course it was present. Patricia without a clipboard would have been like a knight without a sword, except knights rarely issued parking stickers. She braked beside the excavator and climbed out before the cart fully stopped. It rolled another 4 feet and nudged Leonard's empty folding chair into a hedge. "Stop this work immediately," she called. Sal looked at me. "Clipboard with a pulse? In bloom." Patricia marched toward the trench, lifting each foot high over the grass like a heron crossing a carpet store. "This property is subject to a formal remediation order. No alterations are authorized. Section 5.11, paragraph 2, prohibits external plumbing apparatus visible from common areas." Naomi stepped forward. "Ma'am, please remain behind the safety cones." "And you are?" "Naomi Chen, County Fire Protection Engineer." Patricia glanced at Naomi's badge, Big Mike's uniform, the fire engine, and the 6-inch pipe. Her confidence flickered, then rebooted. "The county has no standing to approve modifications governed by private covenant," she said, pronouncing covenant as if it were a spell she had purchased online. "Emergency infrastructure is governed by county code," Naomi replied. "This is not emergency infrastructure. This is a swimming pool." "It was," I said. Patricia turned toward me very slowly. "What have you done?" "Improved fire protection." Big Mike handed her a copy of the provisional registration. 18,240 gallons. Tested access distance, 86 feet. Drafting connection meets ENFA-FIA specifications. If today's flow test passes, it becomes auxiliary reservoir AR-447. Patricia stared at the paper. Her lips moved silently over the words, like a goldfish reviewing a mortgage. You cannot redesign your property simply to evade a board directive. I didn't redesign the property, I said. I added a valve. Sal polished the chrome cap with his sleeve. Very handsome valve. The board will deny it. The board was invited to comment yesterday, Naomi said. The HOA email address responded that the association supported all reasonable efforts to reduce fire danger. Carol Nguyen coughed into her fist. It sounded remarkably like the word perfect. Patricia's head snapped toward me. You misrepresented the project. The subject line was, Emergency Firefighting Reservoir at 47 Lantern Pike. I receive hundreds of emails. You replied in 6 minutes. The crowd made the soft, collective sound people make when a bowling ball is rolling toward the final pin. At 8:31, engine 412 connected to the standpipe. The pipe shuddered, the pump caught prime, and water surged through the test section. The engine held 1,000 gallons per minute, while Sal watched the gauges like a baker observing bread rise. The test passed at 8:43. Naomi bolted a reflective sign to the post beside the connection. Bellwether County Auxiliary Fire Reservoir R-447. Emergency access. Do not block or drain. It was red, white, 18 inches wide, and magnificently official. Patricia pointed at it with a hand trembling like a weather vane in a leaf blower demonstration. That sign violates the approved neighborhood color palette. Naomi capped her pen. You may submit a color comment to the fire marshal. Good, I will. He chose red. Patricia left in the golf cart. She reversed directly into her own portable violation inspection placard, dragging it beneath the cart for half a block. Nobody said a word until the scraping noise faded. Big Mike watched her go. Water's approved, he said flatly. Signs approved. Lady appears pending. I thought that was the end. Patricia treated it as halftime. By 10:26, the portal had added $1,250 for the installation, sign, and industrial vehicle congregation. The fire engine had already left. At noon, she emailed the neighborhood that I had converted a private residence into a municipal utility depot. At 3:40, she taped a cease and desist notice to the county's standpipe. That final act was captured by my camera, Carol's doorbell camera, Leonard's phone, and one teenager's live stream titled, HOA Lady Fights Fire Hydrant. The video collected 2,800 local views before dinner. I emailed Patricia one warning. The reservoir and all marked components are protected emergency infrastructure. Please do not enter my property, obstruct access, alter equipment, or remove official signage. Any concerns should be directed to Fire Marshal Aaron Wells. She replied at 6:13 p.m. Mr. Mercer, your attempt to intimidate the duly elected board is rejected. Pursuant to Section 3.02, Paragraph 7, the association will conduct a final compliance inspection tomorrow at 9 a.m. Access does not require owner consent. Any device placed within the easement remains subject to immediate HOA correction. She copied all 214 homes. Then, at 8:44 the next morning, smoke rose beyond the western ridge. It began as a gray stripe above the cedars. By 8:51, dispatch reported a brush fire 2.3 miles away. Dry wind pushed it east, and the nearest hydrant had low pressure because a contractor had damaged a valve. At 8:57, Big Mike called me. Daniel, we're activating AR-447. Gate is unlocked. Access lane is clear. We'll draft about 6,000 gallons. Stay back from the equipment. Understood. I put on shoes, moved the patio furniture, and stepped into the front yard. The sky smelled of cedar smoke and hot dust. Neighbors stood along the sidewalks checking their phones. In the distance, sirens approached with a sound like the entire county had discovered urgency at once. At exactly 9 o'clock, Patricia arrived for her inspection. She came in the Lexus, followed by Curtis in his pressure-washing van and Vice President Marjorie Klein in an SUV. Patricia wore white slacks ironed sharply enough to separate legal concepts, a cobalt HOA polo like a medal she had awarded herself, and wedge heels unsuited to dirt, emergencies, or reality. She carried her clipboard and a cordless drill. I saw the drill and walked to the edge of my driveway. "Patricia, do not touch the reservoir sign or equipment." She kept walking. "The board has authority to remove unapproved fixtures. The fire district has activated the reservoir. There is no fire here." I pointed at the smoke. She glanced west, with the annoyance of someone noticing the apocalypse had failed to make an appointment. "That is not within Willowbriar Estates. The reservoir serves the county. The covenants serve this community." "Curtis, begin documenting." Curtis raised his phone, but he did not move closer. He looked from the smoke to the drill to Patricia and developed the cautious posture of a man realizing his side gig might become evidence. "Patty," he said, "maybe we should call somebody." "I have called everybody necessary." She unlatched the side gate. "You do not have permission to enter," I said. "Section 3.02, paragraph 7 grants inspection access. Not during an emergency activation. Your fabricated emergency does not supersede board authority." The first fire engine turned onto Lantern Pike behind her. Patricia looked over her shoulder. For one hopeful second, I thought reality had finally reached her front desk. Then she lifted her clipboard, waved the engine toward the curb, and shouted, "You'll need to wait. This property is under HOA inspection." The engine's air horn answered. Patricia jumped like a lawn ornament, discovering electricity. The clipboard flew from her hand, landed flat on the wet coping, and skated directly into the pool. The pages separated beneath the surface in a slow white bloom. Her waterproof plastic cover floated proudly above them, the sole survivor of administrative ambition. Engine 4-12 stopped at the service lane. Big Mike climbed down wearing turnout gear, followed by two firefighters pulling the rigid suction hose. Behind them came Fire Marshal Aaron Wells in a county pickup, and Officer Samuel Dorsey from the Bellwether Police Department. Officer Dorsey had attended 3 previous HOA disputes that year. He was 48, narrow-shouldered, permanently tired, and possessed a face like a man listening to hold music inside his soul. Nothing surprised him, because surprise required energy. "Ma'am," Big Mike called, "step away from the connection." Patricia was already beside the standpipe. "This fixture has been cited for removal. It is active emergency equipment. Not under our governing documents." Big Mike took one step closer. "There's a brush fire moving toward occupied structures. We need the water now." Patricia gripped the drill. "Then you should use an approved hydrant." Every phone in the audience rose. 30 witnesses watched. Carol filmed. Leonard stood beside his folding chair, and Marjorie shrank behind her steering wheel like a turtle regretting committee work. Fire Marshal Wells approached Patricia. He was a lean man with close-cropped gray hair and a voice as calm as a bank vault after closing. "Mrs. Blevins, place the drill on the ground and exit the marked access zone." She squared her shoulders. "And you are?" "Aaron Wells, County Fire Marshal." "Then you should know this installation lacks HOA approval." "It has county approval." "County approval does not negate Section 5.11, Paragraph 2. Fire does." That line passed through the crowd like electricity through a string of Christmas lights. Patricia's face moved through disbelief, irritation, outrage, and a brief internal loading screen. She looked at me, at Big Mike, at the engine, and finally at the sign she had come to remove. "This is a private community," she said. "You cannot simply declare an emergency to win an architectural dispute." Big Mike pointed toward the smoke, now darker and wider above the ridge. "Mrs. Blevins, nobody set a brush fire to win an argument about your color palette." "I did not say he said it." "Good. I said he is exploiting it." Officer Dorsey opened his notebook with the weary delicacy of a man unwrapping the same disappointing sandwich for the 100th time. "Mrs. Blevins, were you told in writing not to interfere with this equipment?" I received an email containing several unsupported assertions. Did the email tell you not to interfere? The board rejects the premise. That wasn't my question. Patricia clutched the drill to her side. Our attorney will address your tone. He can email my tone later. Put down the drill. She placed it on the grass with all the grace of a queen surrendering a cordless appliance to barbarians. Then she made her final mistake. For the record, she announced, raising her chin while Curtis's phone recorded every syllable, I personally ordered this reservoir drained 3 times. I authorized entry to remove the sign, and I instructed our inspector to classify the pool as a fire hazard so the board could act without a membership vote. If the county had respected our authority from the beginning, none of this spectacle would be necessary. Silence landed across the yard like a grand piano dropped from a polite height. Marjorie Klein whispered, "Oh, Patricia." Curtis lowered his phone. "You told me it was just wording." Fire Marshal Wells turned to Officer Dorsey. "Did you get that?" Dorsey looked at the 30 raised phones. "I think the Western Hemisphere got that." Big Mike motioned to his crew. They moved in with the hose. Patricia stepped backward to object, caught one wedge heel in the soft dirt beside the trench repair, windmilled both arms, and sat down squarely in a shallow landscaping puddle created during the morning equipment check. The impact made a sound like a casserole being placed firmly on a church table. She was not hurt. She was, however, now wearing 12 ounces of mud across white slacks, while her laminated visitor badge clung to her backside like a surrender flag. "Do not photograph me!" she yelled, scrambling upright with the dignity of a flamingo exiting a washing machine. Nobody needed to move. She had brought her own inspector, her own vice president, and her own neighborhood-wide appointment notice. The witnesses were her creation. Firefighters connected the hose. Big Mike opened the locking valve. Water thundered into engine 4-12 at 1,000 gallons per minute, and the clear test window flashed blue in the morning sun. For 6 minutes, my father's pool supplied the tanker relay. The water went west to crews protecting 3 homes and a veterinary storage building near Hawthorne Nursery. Patricia stood outside the cones, dripping mud, and watching 6,000 gallons of her obsolete aquatic structure leave under official escort. Fire Marshal Wells cited her $2,500 for obstruction and tampering. Officer Dorsey documented the entry and took statements. Nobody put Patricia in handcuffs. Consequences arrived on carbon copy forms, the only language she truly respected. Before leaving, Officer Dorsey looked at the floating HOA papers in the pool, the fire hose, the muddy president, and the red reservoir sign. "Pool stays," he said. "Clipboard swims." The brush fire was contained by 12:26 p.m. It burned 19 acres, damaged an empty shed, and reached no occupied homes. Big Mike called later to tell me the reservoir had saved the tanker crew about 14 minutes during the lowest pressure part of the response. At 5 o'clock that evening, 173 homeowners joined an emergency membership meeting in the clubhouse. The room normally held 60. People stood in the hallway, outside the windows, and beside the decorative pond Patricia had approved without a vote 2 years earlier. Carol Nguyen projected Patricia's 9 a.m. performance onto the wall. Every time the video reached, "I instructed our inspector to classify the pool as a fire hazard," another person made a noise like air escaping an expensive mattress. Board attorney Martin Gable arrived with the haunted expression of a man whose client had live-streamed the opposite of legal advice. He confirmed the pool restriction and fines were unenforceable, and that Patricia had no authority to commission a false report, enter locked yards, or interfere with county infrastructure. Then he confirmed the association's directors and officers insurer had opened a coverage investigation because deliberate misconduct was excluded from the policy. Patricia tried to speak for 11 minutes. "The board acted," she began, "in good faith under section." "Which section authorized fake fire reports?" Leonard called. "Mr. Pike, you are out of order. So was gravity when you found that puddle." The room broke into laughter. Even Martin Gable covered his mouth with one binder. At 7:42 p.m., the membership voted 161-8 to remove Patricia Blevins as president and director. Gerald voted for her. Marjorie abstained. 6 people later claimed they had pressed the wrong button, which seemed statistically generous, but Emotionally understandable. The board canceled $38,750 in invented fines. Mine had reached $3,095. They reimbursed Carol, Leonard, and 23 others. The association paid the county citation, then sought repayment from Patricia under its misconduct clause. Curtis Bell submitted a signed statement admitting Patricia had written the inspection report and paid him $80 to sign it. He returned the money. He also removed pool safety opinions from his website, which may have been the strongest professional decision made during the entire affair. The HOA did not dissolve. It became boring, which was better. Carol Nguyen was elected interim president. Her inaugural address lasted 9 seconds. Pay the landscaping bill, don't block a fire truck, and try to keep it reasonable, yeah? The motion passed unanimously. By autumn, Willow Briar felt like a neighborhood again instead of a minor principality with trash collection. Children left bicycles outside. Leonard repainted his birdhouse yellow and added a tiny red standpipe. At a block party, Sal grilled sausages while Big Mike demonstrated the reservoir to children, who asked better questions than the old board. The cedar hedge grew over the gap Gerald had used for surveillance. I left one small opening at Beagle height because Leonard's dog had developed a serious interest in watching me skim leaves. Patricia resigned from the architectural committee, sold her house 5 months later for $41,000 below the original asking price, and moved to a downtown condominium called The Meridian, where the pool is on the roof, the clipboard is held by paid staff, and residents are specifically prohibited from touching the fire equipment. My pool remains registered as Auxiliary Reservoir AR447. The county inspects it every April. The reflective red sign is still visible from the service lane, and nobody has submitted a color comment. Near the coping stone, my father's initials are exactly where we left them. My nieces still swim on Sundays. Sometimes I float in his old chair with a fresh mug of coffee on the deck, though it always goes cold before I remember to drink it. So what would you have done if your HOA ordered you to drain your pool because the water was supposedly a fire hazard? Tell me in the comments, and if you enjoyed watching one clipboard get completely outclassed by a 6-inch valve, like the video and subscribe to HOA Uncensored. Patricia wanted the pool gone because it held too much water. The county kept it because, for once, that was exactly the point.